there's been a lot of major technologists saying that we have achieved artificial general intelligence, also called AGI. People like Sam Altman from OpenAI have said that about his company, and particularly their tools like in GTP 4.5, GPT-5, DALL-E 2, so on and so forth. I personally don't believe that we've achieved AGI, which in my basically in my scheme means that an artificial intelligence and AI can think like a human. And I personally am what's called in the philosophy of AI world a weak AI person. I don't think that's ever going to be possible, but I'm still working for it. And so part of the way I'm trying to work towards AGI is by following kind of the lesson plan put out by Pedro Domingos in his book, The Master Algorithm, which I'll have down a link to down in the description. But with Dr. Domingos' idea, he has the 5 tribes of AI. So come join me while we talk about the 5 tribes of AI and how we can combine those together to make AGI possible. Now imagine a world of AI tribes that have different pros and cons and different personalities, if you will, that are used to make an AI that can match the intelligence of humans. Well, this is what's described in Pedro Domingos' book, The Master Algorithm. And we're going to go into the 5 different types of tribes in this case, talk about how they work and what type of examples they have, and then kind of as an introduction to artificial intelligence, and also kind of talk about my experiences in this area as well. So, with no further ado, we basically have the 5 tribes. They're described as Connectionists, Symbolists, Analogists, Bayesian, as in like Thomas Bayes with Bayes' theorem, and Evolutionists. Now, we'll go into each one of those, but those 5 tribes, if they can get combined together, according to Dr. Domingos, they can become, move us towards artificial general intelligence, AGI. The first tribe we're going to talk about is the Connectionists. Now, this is the tribe that when most people think of AI in 2026 is this type. Most machine learning algorithms fall under the Connectionists. This includes neural networks, which is kind of kicked off the AI, I would say, revolution or second revolution in the late 20-aughts, early 2010s. And embeddings and transformers, which really kicked off the generative AI with examples like ChatGPT in 2023, 2024 time period until now, in 2026. Now, these have these pros and cons. There's upsides and downsides with it. Anyone's played with, ChatGPT and had like hallucinations and stuff like that, they probably have an idea that there are weaknesses in this. So the overall personality for Connectionist is, it gives vibes, man. It's like a hippie. It feels deep down in its soul how it does it. So the Connectionist, it can sense what's going on, man. It has a great deep feeling in it. And it can feel what's going on. It gets the vibes. It goes with, what's going on in the world. But one of the problems with this, with Connections, man, is it just goes by vibes. It really can't explain why it's feeling this. It just senses stuff. And sometimes it's feeling stuff that isn't out there, man. It just kind of is out there. And so the Connectionist can do a lot of good things, but it goes with vibes. It goes with gist of what's going on, but it is really good at sensing. The next type of tribe is the Symbolists. Now the Symbolists, kind of the more prominent one in this area that I'm doing research now, called knowledge graphs, which are essentially using graphs in the mathematical sense. So you have an entities and relationships to kind of measure different paths, but also falls into logic rules. So if you're old guy like me and did prolog programming in grad school. Prologue programming falls under the Symbolist type of thing. And rules-based experts kind of fall in these rules. So the last one, rules-based. So the personality of the Symbolist is very strict. It is rules-based. It follows the rules. It doesn't none of that, vibe feeling that you felt with the Connectionists. Now, the Symbolists, they go with they're very, very good at reasoning. They follow the rules. And they can also be used to encode knowledge. So they'll only work around areas that we have direct information with. But I don't want to quibble too much about the Symbolists. The problem with them is since they are very rules-based, they're extremely hard to scale because that's hard. You have a bunch of different paths to go down. They're very brittle. So if you go outside the rules, it doesn't know what to do. It just can follow orders. And it's very good at, very poorly at perceiving stuff. So it can't, it follows the rules, it sees what's out there, but it cannot bring things in and kind of get it. The third type of tribe is the analogists. And so the analogists do comparisons with previous things. These would be kind of like your cool history teacher, where it kind of talks about things in the past and uses those as current examples of what's going on, like talking about how things were, how problems under Bill Clinton kind of go across things going now. And so the history area is just kind of, it goes with it kind of lives in the past, but then it can make, assertions about, what's happened from the past and bring it to the current, bring it to the now. And so, this, you can basically work on very little information. It works with very, very sparse data sets, but it's not great at generalizing. It uses stuff in the past, and sometimes it can't really use it for stuff in the future. So a lot of times it's used for interpretation of stuff in the past or doing very, very basic classification. The analogists, like when you learn history in school, is one of the first things you learn. Same thing goes with this. Analogist is one of the first type of AI techniques that you'll learn as far as classification goes. K-nearest neighbor and K-means classifiers are ones I teach to all my students in the first, is one of the first examples. But the problem is they aren't good at, they're not good with generalization, they're not good with noise. The fourth kind of tribe is the Bayesians. And the Bayesians are, in my opinion, kind of one of the areas of the future as far as AI and machine learning goes. These include, if you're familiar with statistics, naive Bayes, also Bayes nets or Bayesian belief networks, and support vector machines, the area that I did my PhD research in. And so the Bayesians basically use probabilistic type of determinations to give not just a prediction. So the Connectionists, the Symbolists, and Analogists will give you a prediction of what they think is going to happen or do some sort of, do some sort of classification. The Bayesians can also not just make a class, but they also determine how likely it is to happen. So this is kind of like your friend that they will, try to give you kind of be a bummer, kind of maybe like a Debbie Downer. They'll say, okay, well, this can happen, but it only has a 30% chance of happening. Or there's a 10% chance it doesn't happen, so don't put all your eggs in one basket. And so they're really good at handling uncertainty because they give you a probability with its classification, but also it requires a lot of training data to make this. Designing is really hard. Even now, with a lot of AI and computing that's allowed to help with training our AI models, there's still some sort of human determination in there, but it is getting better. And, as of now, of 2026, there's still a lot of manually stuff done. But I think in the future, as more people work on it, the more money goes into it, there'll probably be some more manual ways of doing some of the determinations of kind of the path that you go down for as part of the statistics for this. And they're very computationally intensive, so they're kind of slow. But they are really good tools. I've used these in my products. I did my PhD work in this field, so I think it's really, really interesting. But it's not as mature as kind of the other three that we talked about. There's not as much research money going into that, mainly because of the slowness, and they have a hard time taking advantage of GPUs. And so, especially Connectionist technologies can use GPUs. They can use the hardware really well. That's one of the reasons why they're so popular, in addition to how well they work. And then the last one evolutionists. Think about your person that makes predictions about the future and that really can't make an interpretation about them. Genetic algorithms, genetic programming, which are basically, so evolutionists are basically trying to discover new things, and so they use different types of techniques to find new paths for doing stuff. They're very good at optimization. So optimization, I mean in the mathematical sense, basically trying to find solutions for particular ways of doing discovery. They can explore large spaces fairly quickly, and they don't need to do differentiability. So they don't need to do special type of math. They kind of, especially genetic algorithms, they kind of basically kind of almost like a pseudo brute force trying different paths, but they do it in a very optimized way, or in this case, a very fast type of way. Unfortunately, they are very computationally intensive, even though they are shortcuts around trying to look at all these different paths. They're very slow. So you don't want to use them in real time. And then also, since you're trying to predict the future, there's actually very low interpretability. You really, like any futurist, they can make predictions. It's hard to really determine whether they're right or not. So this is kind of a quick overview of the 5 tribes of AI, according to Pedro Domingos. And we will explore more of these as videos that come up as we go.